You can roughly locate any community in the world, somewhere along a scale running all the way from democracy to despotism. One community may be near the democracy end, another somewhere in the middle, and a third may be near the despotism end. Let's find out about despotism. This man makes it his job to study these things.
Well, for one thing, avoid the comfortable idea that the mere form of government can of itself safeguard a nation against despotism. Germany, under President Hindenburg, was a republic. And yet in this republic, an aggressive despotism took root and flourished under Adolf Hitler. When a competent observer looks for signs of despotism in a community, he looks beyond fine words and noble phrases.
One nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Many observers have found that two workable yardsticks help in discovering how near a community is to despotism: the respect scale and the power scale.
A careful observer can use a respect scale to find how many citizens get an even break. As a community moves towards despotism, respect is restricted to fewer people. A community is low on a respect scale if common courtesy is withheld from large groups of people on account of their political attitudes, or because they don't like a man's race or his religion.
More than 100,000 men, women, and children, all of Japanese ancestry, removed from their homes in the Pacific Coast states to wartime communities established in out-of-the-way places.
When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, our west coast became a potential combat zone. Living in that zone were more than 100,000 persons of Japanese ancestry. 2/3 of them American citizens, 1/3 aliens. We knew that some among them were potentially dangerous. Most were loyal. But no one knew what would happen among this concentrated population if Japanese forces should try to invade our shores. Military authorities therefore determined that all of them, citizens and aliens alike, would have to move.
A power scale is another important yardstick of despotism. It gauges the citizens' share in making the community's decisions. Communities which concentrate decision-making in a few hands rate low on a power scale and are moving towards despotism. Like France under the Bourbon kings, one of whom said, "The state, I am the state." Today, democracy can ebb away in communities whose citizens allow power to become concentrated in the hands of bosses.
It is now my honor to sign into law the USA Patriot Act of 2001.
The test of despotic power is that it can disregard the will of the people. It rules without the consent of the governed.
On October 26, 2001, President George W. Bush signed the Patriot Act, which gave law enforcement broader authority to investigate and prosecute suspected terrorists.
Also, Congress, your elected officials, both the Senate and the House of Representatives, have just overwhelmingly passed the National Defense Authorization Act.
The Senate has now passed the indefinite detention bill, 86-13. That after the House passed the defense bill. This is the reconciled version, the one that the president is now expected to sign. Russia Today writes exactly 220 years to the date after the Bill of Rights was ratified. The U.S. Senate today voted 86-13 in favor of the NDAA for fiscal year 2012, allowing the indefinite detention and torture of Americans.
You walk into this room at your own risk, because it leads to the future. Not a future that will be, but one that might be.
It gives the military the power to indefinitely detain American citizens, even those captured here in the United States, suspected, just suspected, not convicted, of some sort of involvement or affiliation with terrorism. So no trial, prison based solely on suspicion. The Fourth Amendment, out the window. As you may be able to tell, I think this is kind of a big deal.
This is not a new world. It is simply an extension of what began in the old one. It has patterned itself after every dictator who has ever planted the ripping imprint of a boot on the pages of history since the beginning of time.
The Human Rights Watch has labeled President Obama's U-turn a historic tragedy for rights, adding, by signing this defense bill, President Obama will go down in history as the president who enshrined indefinite detention without trial in U.S. law, said Kenneth Roth, executive director of Human Rights Watch.
It has refinements, technological advances, and a more sophisticated approach to the destruction of human freedom. But like every one of the super states that preceded it, it has one iron rule. Logic is an enemy and truth is a menace.
Insider documents recently obtained by InfoWars reveal the current and ongoing operations to staff FEMA and U.S. Army camps inside the U.S. Now, this comes immediately after the Senate passed the National Defense Authorization Act, which allows indefinite detention of American citizens. All this at a time when economic conditions and mass demonstrations sweep through the country and threaten potential unrest.
In a downright despotism, opposition is dangerous, whether the despotism is official or whether it is unofficial. If a community's economic distribution becomes slanted, its middle-income groups grow smaller, and despotism stands a better chance to gain a foothold. If this condition exists over the nation as a whole, so that the control of jobs and business opportunities is in a few hands, despotism stands a good chance. Where land is privately owned, one sign of a poorly balanced economy is the concentration of land ownership in the hands of a very small number of people. A community rates low on an information scale when the press, radio, and other channels of communication are controlled by only a few people, and when citizens have to accept what they are told. In communities of this kind, despotism stands a good chance. What sort of community do you live in? Where would you place it on a democracy-despotism scale? To find out, you can rate it on a respect scale and a power scale. And to find out what way it is likely to go in the future, you can rate it on economic distribution and information scales. The lower your community rates on economic distribution and information scales, the lower it is likely to rate on respect and power scales, and thus to approach despotism. What happens in a single community is the problem of its own citizens. But it is also the problem of us all, because as communities go, so goes the nation.